Good evening and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James, and unfortunately no Steve and George tonight. Steve got a bit of bad news last night. An extended member of his family passed away, so he's busy doing what he has to do there. So condolences goes out to Steve and the family there. So you just have myself. It's Sunday the 27th of May 2018, and you'll just have me chatting away, talking about a few things, gone through a few bits and pieces as usual. Now, our guest on the show tonight is a chap called Pat Greene. Now, you all know Pat. He is the leader of Direct Democracy Ireland. Pat's been on the show before, but tonight we're not going to be talking about politics. We're going to be talking about health and alternative health. So, something that Pat is involved in, and we're going to be having a good chat about that. But before we do that, let's find out what the communication channels are.
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
There you go, folks. Now, Steve normally does all the reading out of the communication channels, so I have to remember everything now, but you can contact us. Well, on the website is obviously OYMradio.com, and there's players on the website where you can tune in and listen to the show. Also, we have the PIR player on the website there as well. We are on Facebook, and you can find us there. There's a player on Facebook, and on MeWe as well. And we have our phone number, which is 046 927 1212. You can phone in. And if it works, obviously it's been intermittent. And we're on Twitter as well. You can find us there as well. So if there's any, and on email, might as well give out the email there, which is info@oymradio.com. That's where you can find us. Right. Now, we don't have a lot to report on or talk about on our list. Normally we have a number of things to go through, but we didn't see, there's a lot of things going on, but, you know, we didn't want to kind of fill up the unscripted script with everything that's going on. So we just want to mention a couple of things here. And one of the things is from ZeroHedge.com. And ZeroHedge said that all 34 bishops in Chile suddenly resign over absolutely deplorable paedophile priest scandal. All 34 bishops in Chile have tendered their resignation in the wake of yet another paedophile priest scandal in which high-level officials covered up the institutionalized sexual abuse of minors, even threatening officials tasked with investigating sex crimes and the destruction of evidence. 31 active bishops and 3 who are signed a document with their offers to resign following an emergency meeting this week with Pope Francis. Francis can accept the resignations one by one, reject them outright, or delay a decision. It seems to be getting more and more common for either priests walking away or priests being exposed. We had the Rhine report over here in Ireland, as a lot of people know, and exposed a hell of a lot. And there seems to be more and more coming out. Now, we were told, as you all know from listening to the show on a regular basis, that we were told from 2016 onwards, there's going to be more and more and more information coming out and people being exposed. And this is exactly what's happening at the moment. It's really escalating, and more and more information coming out. So, you know, you just have to kind of, stay centered and just watch be an observer and watch what's going on. That's the only thing I'd recommend you doing. Now, we normally have Alan's week and Steve's week. Obviously, Steve's not around at the moment, so I'm just going to go over to my bits and pieces now. If you remember, in the last couple of shows, I mentioned that I had a bit of an elbow problem. Actually, might talk to Pat about that when we get him on. And I tried the Lemurian plug and I tried the Pain Genie. And although it seemed to do a little bit, improve it a little bit, didn't seem to do anything major. And I didn't want to wrap the Lemurian plug around, get an extension lead and wrap it around my arm. I didn't really want to do that. So the only thing that I start using, which seems to give actually much better relief at the moment anyway, is the magnesium spray. Now, if you remember, we had Clive the Carl on the show a couple of weeks ago, and Clive was saying about our body needs enzymes, and as we get older, our body doesn't produce them, so we have to substitute these enzymes with external treatments like magnesium spray or Celtic sea salt with the magnesium in it. And I'm currently taking the serapeptides, one a day, which is brilliant. I also have the spirulina, and obviously you avoid all the bits and pieces, all the nasty stuff that's out there. Again, we'll talk to Pat about that. So far, the actual magnesium spray has been pretty good. It's not as painful as it used to be, so I'm just kind of topping up with that all the time. And as I say, as we get older, we need to be doing this. We need to be taking various treatments and alternative products that will do the job, that are natural, not kind of pharmaceutical drugs. For everybody knows that by now. But it's anyway. That's the good news. Anyway, the magnesium spray seems to be helping an awful lot. So and of course, if your body's going to be lacking magnesium, that's the best way to get it in, along with the salt. Anyway, right. That's all that I have on my list. There's nothing else on the list. If something comes up, I'll give you a shout and let you know. But that's it really. I think I've just been busy doing other things. I've been kind of sidetracked, so didn't get much time to put a lot on the list. And there's other information that we're waiting to come through as well. So we won't be saying anything about that until it comes through. Just a quickie on the auction. If you remember what we're having, myself and Steve are having an auction, and the auction is dinner with myself and Steve, and the highest bidder wins the auction, and the money raised is going to the Mead Food Bank for struggling families. That's what the money's going to be used for. And so far the auction is up at the auction price at the moment is €125. We're going to finish it up next week. Next week will be the last week. But we also got a donation from Dennis, who put initial price in of 100. So we have that, and also money that a donation that Dougie sent over as well. So we're going to compile all that money together, and then we're going to divide it in between two groups who deal with food banks and struggling families that are struggling to afford food. And we'll keep you posted on that and let you know. But next week is the last week. So if anybody else wants to put a bid on the auction, the money's going to a good cause. By all means do it this week, because this week's going to be the last week. And then what we'll do is we'll read out all the information next week and let you know who the winner is. So that's the plan of attack there. Right, our guest is Pat Greene. Pat is the leader of DDI, Direct Democracy Ireland, and it's a party that want to bring in direct democracy back into the Irish Constitution. And obviously recall as well. Now, we've clarified this with Pat now. We're not actually going to be talking politics tonight. We're going to be talking health. But we can get an update anyway on the political system and what's been going on. I'm sure we can touch base with that. Good evening, Pat. How are you?
Good evening, Alan. I'm in good form, thanks. And yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. Thanks a lot for coming on the show. And for once, we're not going to be talking politics. But I think we should do, thank God, it's a break away from the politics. But I think what we should do is at least get an update on what DDI have been doing anyway, as you're on. And just give us a 5 or 10 minute synopsis on what's been happening.
Well, there isn't an awful lot happening per se with DDI, and we're not pushing anything forward. Now, we are planning to do some local DDI, direct democracy initiatives. They might not hold any legal, they won't have any legal implications for anybody, so nobody's going to be held legally bound by them. But what we're trying to do with where we have groups that can do it is run local plebiscites on issues that happen that impact on others. The other initiative that we're trying to organise at the moment is that we can get electronic voting. Now, that's just to make it easier for us. Some people don't like it, others do, but it's a way of getting people interested in direct democracy and how it can impact their lives. So there's our little projects that we're trying to get off the ground. It's not easy, but we are working on it. We're also engaged with other direct democracy movements or political parties that are springing up really all over the world. You've Finland, Sweden, of course, you've got England, Germany, Crete, Greece, Ontario. There's various parts of Canada, because Canada is split up into various republics, or not republics, but sorry, definitely not republics. But states, you've got Alberta and Montreal, or not Montreal, Ontario, they use those two. So you've got the British Columbia would have a direct democracy unit, and so there's in the United States also there's a few of the states that have sprung up with new direct democracy movements. So we're keeping in touch with each other. We're trying to formulate some form of common ground, and we're going to try and launch onto the international stage as much as we can to try and get interest in it in the general public. So they're the things we're doing in the background. We might not see us doing much in the foreground, but there's a lot of footwork being done behind the scenes. That's basically where we are at the moment.
Yeah, as you say, it's very hard because people are so fed up with the political system, and they obviously see a party, and you might just see DDI and go, oh, here's another party wants to get in, and not actually understand the whole direct democracy process. And when you kind of sit down and explain it to people, they go, well, that makes sense. You know,
but I suppose I know we're not. Sorry for cutting you short on. I know we're not going to discuss in depth in politics, but if I could just mention what it is we're supposed to be living in, what we are living in, and what Direct Democracy Ireland or Direct Democracy will do. And what I say to people, and I've been saying recently, is that we live in what's called a representative democracy, where we elect somebody to represent us in Dáil Éireann. And they are supposed to represent or represent our views. They're not, so we elect a representative. The representatives elect the government. We don't elect the government. And those ministers are then servants. That's what the word minister means, servant. What has happened is that the ministers have started controlling the representatives, who in turn control the people, which is a top-down system. And they have done that because the people have no say. We're not engaged because we have no say. So what I say also to people is that if you're a member of a group, in your work, for argument's sake, or wherever, local authority, or even your local housing estate, and you're a member of a group, and you get somebody to represent you at a meeting somewhere else. So your group comes to an agreement, and your representative goes to that group. Can that representative or representative have any of their own thoughts or express their own feelings at that meeting? The answer has to be no, because they're not representing themselves, they're representing the group. The representatives in Dáil Éireann should never have their own personal views aired in that chamber. Never. Because they're not there for their own personal views. But this is what's happening. Now, with direct democracy, if it was a true democracy, as another name for direct democracy, or if it's pure direct democracy, you don't have any representatives. It comes all straight from the people. It's too slow, doesn't work too well. It can be achievable with modern day technologies, but that's way down the line. But the best case scenario then is to leave the representative democracy in place, but beside it run direct democracy. And direct democracy is, very briefly, you go down to your local authority, you pick up a starter pack, and the starter pack is you decide the wording of the referendum, not the government. You decide, an individual. At the top of that, you put that at the top of your page, and then you go around, you collect enough signatures to agree with you, for that then to be put to the local authority area or your national government, so that everybody gets to debate it and discuss it. And then the referendum is called, and the government is legally bound to implement the outcome of the referendum. So that's direct democracy. So what can happen with direct democracy as a bolt-on, as a side-by-side with representative democracy, is that when a representative starts expressing their own views, or they start doing things that nobody wants done, or even another option is when they don't do anything, but the people want it done. Well, you can step in, call a referendum, and have it done. That's basically why I'm in direct democracy. It does lead into why I'm into health, And I suppose that'll be a good way of introducing the health side of it. Or unless, did you want to say something there?
No, just going to say that, I think we have to start calling government corporation, because it's not a government, it's a corporation. And the TDs and politicians are staff members, and because it is, I see it as a corporation. I don't see it as a government, because, that's why corporations do what they want to do. And that's what they're doing. They're not a government, because if they were a government, they'd be doing what the people want them to do. Correct.
And it is run like a corporation. It's a top-down situation. The CEO calls the shots.
Yeah.
The ministers are serving the CEO rather than the people. And then the representatives are representing the ministers, not the people. It's run like a dictatorial CEO situation within a corporation. And you're right, it is a corporation as it stands. It's not supposed to be.
Totally. And I seen an article on Passing today on Facebook, and they're saying they're introducing the installation of the water meters again. Now, obviously they are going to try that again.
Well, they've never stopped.
Yeah.
They've been put in. Sorry if I got me cross. Yeah. They're being installed in Drogheda on a weekly basis.
Yeah. So there's an example of, we have all these people. I was part of the protest along with 80,000, 100,000 other people. We don't want the water meters. And of course, they just ignore the people, and that's because that's a corporation.
It goes one step further. Our exemption was the 9.4, if I remember correctly. That's gone. The exemption that we had within the EU is gone. And the likes of Brendan Ogle and the rest of them who marched us down, really marched us over the cliff, they said nothing. They just let it go. And that was our only way of stopping it. The second way of stopping Irish water, going ahead the way it is to vote for people from direct democracy or people who want direct democracy, so that the people can stop all this stuff. You don't have to go marching down the road with 200,000 people 3 times and be ignored.
Yeah.
Because all you have to do is get 50,000 signatures, call a referendum. Now, when I say all, it's all right if you have the sort of 200,000 people wanting to change the situation. But if you are a small group with a particular gripe, it's very hard to get 50,000 signatures. It's not that easy.
Yeah. Well, there is a third method. There is a third way, and the third way is approach them regarding the actual technology and ask them to prove that the technology is safe. We know the technology is not safe. That's kind of myself and Steve's area, because we've been obviously researching this and speaking to the experts, and we have all the interviews done of all the experts on OYM who would be more than happy to write letters to say that in their expert experience, being doctors and scientists and everything else, that the technology is dangerous, because anything over 300 megahertz is microwave, and the actual water meters are over 300.
I was going to touch on that when we were talking about health as well, because you cannot talk about health in this country without talking about politics.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what we'll do.
Because one goes into the other.
Yeah, of course. Well, okay, so we have the story that, Pat Greene, DDI, you're in politics, but you did mention to us before, the last time you were on the show, that you were big into health, and that's what we said. Well, Pat, why don't you come on and tell us what part of health you're into and how did you get into it? So do you want to take us into that?
Yeah. My son was adopted. The son that I just recently passed away for other reasons I'll get into on another night.
Yeah.
But Connor had a very difficult situation in school. And we were trying to get to the root of the situation, or the root of the reasons why he behaved the way he did in school and why he had difficulties learning. And he had other health issues as well. And it was because of these health issues that we started questioning what was going on, because we were getting nowhere. We came across a diagnosis of I'm not quite sure how to categorize it, but it's not a handicap by all means, but it develops into one, but it's where the neurons don't develop in the cerebellum. This can happen to a rich person, a poor person, or any person. It's just they reckon that there's 1 in 3 in every classroom affected by there's 3 children in every classroom affected by what's called neuron developmental delay. And it's where the axons don't reach out and catch on to, reach out and create the synapses. Now, the synapse is only, it's fractions of a millimeter in gap between them is fractions of a millimeter. So what happens is, if you remember, the dendrites don't reach out to the axon. The dendrites, if you can imagine an egg on a frying pan, and if you can have little arms reaching out from the egg, and those little arms reach out to catch on to a second arm coming back down from another egg. These arms don't develop because there are situations with children where, for instance, children don't crawl, are susceptible, where they decide to walk without crawling. Children who don't crawl, again, where they bum around, where they're just sliding on their bum continuously. It's what's called childhood reflexes. The ones I remember are the Gallant, the Morrow. There's 7 main ones, and Connor had all 7. And we found that there was a very simple exercise that could be done. Now, it takes 10 minutes every evening, or 20 minutes every evening to do it. And you would think that would be quite easy, but with children who are in this situation, that can run to half an hour. And it's every single night. You can't miss a night. So it becomes an extreme difficulty for the parents, let alone the child. But these simple exercises were able to reverse a lot of Connor's situation, but not all of it. So we had to start digging deeper. I will say that what happens to these children, and they're very easily for me, and especially for the people who are NDD specialists, to see them walking down the street, you can see them a mile away. These children, that a lot of them are some of them, depending on the combination of childhood reflexes. Now, I'll give you an instance on the childhood reflex, is where, when you put your finger into the hand of an infant and they have that, they just clasp.
Yeah.
They don't have to think, the fingers just clasp. Well, that's an infantile reflex. When if a child is suckling at the breast, to get the child to start suckling again, you just rub the cheek a little bit. Because it's the rubbing of the cheek up against the breast that starts the suckling. That's a childhood reflex. With my son, and with a lot of other children, those childhood reflexes are still there. They have not been suppressed, which causes the difficulties with the cerebellum. Now, the cerebellum is a part of the brain that it's for your skeletal muscles. That's what allows you to sit upright. It allows you to sit. It allows you to stand. It allows you to walk. And it allows you to write. Writing is a very difficult task for the brain. We take it for granted that we just put a pen on paper and all these squiggles make something or make sense. For these children, because the cerebellum doesn't work, the cortex has to take over from what the cerebellum would normally do. So the cortex is normally used for hearing, sight, and cognitive reasoning. So your learning area, the area of your brain that you use for working out problems. So now you have the area of the brain that's supposed to be used for looking at the blackboard is using to keep your muscles straight. So if anybody's listening, if they want to do a small experiment, if you see a child swinging on the back 2 legs of a chair and they are concentrating beautifully, so put yourself into a chair, swing on the chair, so the way you're rocking back and forth, and you'll see the posture that your body takes in the chair. Now, what I want you to do is just let the chair go down onto all fours, but don't correct your posture. You will find that your face is hitting the desk. These children have to let go of the skeletal muscles in order to learn. So when they look at the blackboard and they're rocking back and forth on the chair, they can learn because the learning part of the brain can do what it's supposed to do. But then the teacher tells them to sit up, bolt upright. A lot of those children actually go deaf for the few moments that the cortex is starting to kick in. It's like a computer rebooting. But the teacher, being a smart arse, 9 times out of 10, would ask the child a question to make sure that they were concentrating on the board. The child actually hasn't heard the question. So then now the child is a dumb, stupid ass. And then the child's self-esteem goes down. And with it, everything goes. Their self-esteem is so shot and shattered because of days and weeks and hours and months and years of this being told you're stupid, when in reality they're just trying to learn, but they're trapped by a school regime and insurance that won't let you rock in a chair. These children will tend to sit on their one leg while they're learning. They will always be slouched over the bench. Connor could never stay on his side of the desk, ever. And he got into trouble for it, which hit his self-esteem as well. These children are the ones who can't play football because their eyes can't track the ball. You know, when you put a pen in front of you, about 6 or 7 inches away from your nose, and you go up and down and left and right, and you try and track the pen.
Yeah.
These children can't track the pen. When you start moving up, their eyes shoot up because they're trying to find the top of the pen. They've lost it. When you go in a figure of 8, they're completely lost because the figure of 8 should cross the center line. Which is the center of one brain to the left.
I've never heard of this before, Pat. So is this all new studying and new science that has been researched?
1953.
1953. So it's been around a while, but it's just strange.
There was a teacher in 1953 in America who understood it and created little exercises to correct as much of it as possible. With a 43% success rate, it's very difficult to correct.
Right, okay. Because, I mean, is the education system aware of this, and have they...
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Is this part, and do they train the teachers to be aware of things like this? Okay.
This is part of why I'm in Direct Democracy Ireland. I've seen all this. I understand why the system won't do it. But it's not up to the system to decide not to do it. It's up to us. We're paying their taxes. We're paying our taxes into a fund which pays their wages.
Well, the government don't have any money. They have air money.
Correct. But why are they not looking after 3 children in every classroom who have this issue? These children are always up paring their pencils. They get given out to for paring their pencils because teacher thinks he's just going up to pare his pencil and get away from his desk. That is not the case. Because the cerebellum is not working properly and the cortex is operating the hand. For instance, if any of the listeners are there, you want to draw a circle. And you'll find that a lot of people cannot get, not a lot, but 3 in every classroom, cannot get the end of the circle to meet. You have these 2 little tails sticking out at the end. You see people who write that way? That is because they cannot let it flow, because the cortex is calculating each movement of the circle. So their circle effectively is a series of short, straight lines. So if you start at the top of the circle and you're going to the left, the brain is saying left a bit, left a bit, left a bit down, left a bit down, left a bit down, left a bit down. You get quarter way down, and then it's right a bit, right a bit, right a bit, right a bit, and you're constantly trying to go up. And because the eyes can't track, they miss the ends. They have no spatial awareness. So you have all this going on. So they're left out of sports. They can be very good at swimming underwater, but not on top of water. They can be very good at tennis, extremely good at tennis, but useless at other things. And so they get left out a lot, and the other issues then knock-on effects down the road. A lot of them will have dyspraxia, where there's no link between the eye and the hand again, but it's more severe in these people. So they literally, if you get somebody with severe dyspraxia and you get them to draw a car, they will see a perfectly good car on the page. All you see is a mass of scribbles. Yeah. So there's that total disconnect, and it's very difficult for them. Dyspraxia is recognized, but NDD isn't, because if they recognize NDD, they have to spend more money.
And of course, they don't want to do
the
that.
money is not on. Yeah, but the money is not on their pensions. It's on our children.
Yeah. It's disgraceful what's going on. Again, we don't want to get involved in politics, but it's disgraceful what's going on. I mean, we did have a chat before we went live, and we had a quick mention about Vera Toomey and her daughter having massive epileptic fits, 40 a day nearly. And we've had Vera Toomey on our show, and Vera had to go over to Europe to have the CBD oil, and everything that she did, and even when she got the award, I think it was a humanitarian award, RTE apparently chopped off some of the speech that she did. You know, it's so blatant and in your face, all this stuff that the government are doing, and all the cesspit of corruption that's going on, and all the media that is supporting it, and the people that support all this. And of course, we are just sitting back and going, yeah, well, you know, that's just the way it is. You know, I'm just amazed. I mean, it baffles me.
The conditioning in school. Now, I'm not going to go down anywhere near the Lloyd's latest referendum or anything like that. I don't want to. But I will mention that when it comes to the apathy that we have towards whatever is done in this country by politicians or Doyles or whatever, you have to remember that we are taught in school absolutely nothing about the political system. We are taught nothing about our constitution. We are taught nothing about our rights. Nothing is discussed about the most important document that we have, a document known as the Constitution. Now, it's my understanding, my belief, that the Constitution is basically an agreement between families, between your family and my family, because in a republic, we are all equal. I can't tell you what to do, you can't tell me what to do. Well, because then we set up, my family and your family, Alan, and the families of the people listening, set up this thing called a judiciary, because we want some arbitration somewhere, figure out what's going on, or has something done, has something happened. They're supposed to work with us, not for us, but with us, to come to agreements. And then you've got this thing called the state. Now, they are supposed to work for us under our constitution, but they're not doing that either. The reason they're not doing it is because we have absolutely no say. So first of all, we're indoctrinated into saying that the state knows everything, we know nothing. We're not taught what our rights are, so we're not going to get engaged. And the reason we're not getting engaged is because of all of that. And we have to get into a stage where people start getting engaged in politics again. The state can do anything it wants with our money. You can see that with the bailout of the banks.
Yeah.
€7.5 billion every year given to banks for a debt we did not incur. And that is and then there's the other $500 million being burned. Sorry, the $7 billion going out and $500 million being burned every year at the behest of the EU and the central bank, EU central bank. We have no say over it. So we accept, well, we come into this situation where, Asher, what can you do?
Yeah.
That's all you ever hear is, Asher, what can you do?
Yeah. I know I'm okay, Jack. You know,
it's not even that I'm okay. That's the I am okay, Jack, is a lot of it. But it's, sure, what can you do?
Yeah.
The government is in control.
Yeah.
Government always was in control and always will be in control. And you don't go up against City Hall.
Yeah. But see,
City Hall will do that to you.
But the problem is that when you say, sure, what can you do? That just, to me, is laziness in the people, because that means they haven't even thought of any idea that might work to do something about it. It means they don't want to do something about it because they're probably in their comfort zone. And when people are in their comfort zone, sure, I'm in my comfort zone, you know, unless something major happens, I'm happy in my comfort zone. And it's when they are deharmonized by their comfort zone. It's like when people they're healthy and they're going along and they're having their, you know, their pints of beer and all their, you know, the MSG and their, you know, fluoride and everything else. And all of a sudden, and they won't change. You'll tell them all about the bad stuff, and they go, yeah, sure, you know, yeah, sure, what can you do? Like, you know, everything's dangerous, you know. And all of a sudden,
not until it affects them.
Yeah, that's it. All of a sudden, cancer happens, or something else happens. Now they've woken up and they said, "Oh, I've just been diagnosed with X, Y, and Z. What can we do about it?" Oh, so do you know what causes that? And then we can go into the talk about the health, and the issues in the food and stuff. But that's generally when people when they're in harmony, when they're in their comfort zone, in their bubble. They won't change. Their belief system won't change and they won't change. And this is the experience that we've had in OYM. They don't want to change because why would they change? I'm happy, I'm comfortable, everything's okay. It's only when they get deharmonized. And a lot of people, it's either the health issue or there's a death in the family or something is the trigger to change their belief system. And then they start opening their mind and start peeking behind the curtain to see what's going on.
I'm a perfect example of one of those people. Sad to say, but I'm a perfect example. I was happy in my nappy, as they say, until my son presented with all these issues. And then I came up against the system. And then when I got up against the system, I woke up to what the system is. A self-serving, egotistical group of people who are bleeding us dry.
Yeah.
And they don't give a toss.
No.
And there's the difficulty. I know civil servants in the health system who are extremely hard workers, but they're carrying at least 6 other workers with them. They are doing the work of 6, and the other 6 are lazy. I won't use the language.
Yeah.
But they're worthless. Really are worthless. If they were in the private industry, they'd have been fired years ago.
Yeah.
But in their defence, I will say that if they were in private industry, they would never have developed that laziness.
Well, they'd either...
So there's that other side of it.
Well, they'd either work or they'd be sacked. And this is what the one thing about the corporate world. And now, I'm not saying the corporate world is perfect because there are people in the corporate world who are bone lazy as well. And for whatever reason, they don't get sacked. And I've come across them as well. So it works in the same way. But there's less of a chance.
Not to the same level. Yeah.
Not to the same level. I have a friend of mine who has let's just say a relative who works in Navan County Council. And he was telling me that this person was up for promotion. And what happened was 2 things happened. 2 stories he told me. One, a politician's daughter got in and she was promoted above this girl for no reason other than it was the politician's daughter. So nepotism there. And then there was another guy who used to be drinking on the job. 11 o'clock in the morning and he'd be drunk. I'd have drink on him. And they said, "Oh, sure, we can't sack him because he's such and such nephew of politician, whatever."
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be a politician.
That's
the sad part.
Yeah, I know, it doesn't have to be.
The story, and people always say, "Actually, that's only a story." This is not third hand. This happened to the person I know in the Department of Agriculture. It's endemic. It's almost a carbon copy of what you did. I say almost, not quite, but the same effect. She was up for promotion. She was approached. She had all the qualifications required. She was approached and was told, "Apathy, you don't need the promotion. Your husband has a good job and he's well paid." Wow. The inference was that person needs the money more than you. It's nothing got to do with ability. It's nothing got to do with competence. That person needs the money more than you. And that's endemic in the civil service. Right across it. And that's a problem. Yeah. So it had the same effect. Again, it was that the politician's daughter needed it more than you needed it. And there's nothing to do with competence or ability.
Yeah. Plus the fact I heard as well that, unfortunately, I know the public sector rules have changed because we read an article out there a couple of weeks ago about the laws or about the terms and conditions and the contracts because up to a while ago, the deal was that if a public sector worker was sacked, they'd have to be paid up to the time of their retirement. Now, apparently something that we read out a couple of weeks ago, they're saying that they're changing the terms and conditions that won't apply, which is about time because then what you need to do is go in and sack all the deadwood. I mean, it's bad enough when you drive down certain roads, as you know, with all the potholes and the guys are out filling the holes And near enough, the filling of the hole makes it bloody worse, more than the hole itself, because there's a big mound in the way, because he didn't bring the steamroller out to flatten the actual the tarmac macadam on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I said that on the show, and I say it again. I mean, I'm from a corporate background. If I seen that, I'd be finding out, there'd be two things. I'd be saying, number one, redo that and do it right. If you don't, you're sacked. It's that simple.
Yeah.
You know.
But see, when we bring that back into the health system, we have a big problem. We have a huge problem. Because you've got that incompetence running the system.
Yeah.
Incompetent people running the system. Not only are they incompetent, but they're incapable of making a decision.
Yeah.
Without having the required paperwork. And it's all about the paperwork. It's nothing got to do with your health, my health, or anyone else's health. It is the paperwork correct? And then they just stamp the paper and move it on. Nobody is actually doing any work.
Well, I was told to me by an ex-guard through a chap I know very well. He said the ex-guard said, document everything but do nothing.
Yes.
And I'd say, you know, in politics it's the same thing. But let's get into the health side. Let's get into that, and let's talk more. If we don't mind expanding, we can expand on what you said there. But I do want to get into the aspartame and the MSGs and all this stuff, and your experience on general health and any ideas you have for our listeners out there and things they should be doing or looking at or avoiding. If you have any information on that.
How many hours do we have, or how many days do we have?
Well,
that's just. I'll tell you what I'll do.
Well, we have another hour, so you know.
Yeah, I can. Like, they're just basic things that people know what to avoid. But I suppose the one that I would go for more than anything else is sugars and hidden sugars. Sugars, people think. First of all, when I say to people, look, you're going to have to cut down on your sugar content. And they said, but I only take half a spoon of my tea. And I find it hard not to hit them and wake up that. That's the least amount of sugar you're talking about in your diet. Even people who don't take much in the line of biscuits or sweets, but you will find that they're eating pasta to beat the band. And pasta is a refined product. Stay away from refined food. Simple as that. There's one sentence that I learned over the years, that convenience will kill you.
Yeah.
If your food is convenient, the more convenient it is, the more likely it is to kill you. It is not fresh, it is processed, and it has all sorts of chemicals in it to give it shelf life. Or it has something done to it to give it the shelf life that destroys any of the nutrients.
Well, they always say the longer the sell-by date, the worse it is for you.
Yeah. And the other aspect of it is that when you get white rice, the rice is bleached, literally. It doesn't come. Natural rice doesn't even look like it. Even when the rice is in the field, it looks that size, but it doesn't come out white. It's bleached. So any nutrients that were in it are divided. You were talking earlier about enzymes. There's no enzymes in it. Gone.
So what
you've got left is starch.
Okay, so what rice is out there that is unbleached?
I would go, the easiest one for most people is I would do a progressive movement from white rice to brown rice.
Okay.
It's a bit better than white rice.
Okay.
But the wild rices are much better again.
Well,
because they're full of all sorts of varieties.
I know there's an article on Facebook there recently about some rices now are being shipped out of China, funny enough, and it's more plastic than rice.
To be honest with you, I've no information on that. It would not surprise me. But if you found that there was plastics in it and you started boiling it, it would show up fairly quickly. What I would say is that if you can get as natural a product as possible, all the better. But price is also another issue. Yeah.
Well, this is half the battle. It's families are struggling to survive. They can barely afford the food. And this is why people are going to Aldi. I mean, I shop in Aldi. I don't buy a lot in Aldi, but I do buy a few things in Aldi because it's all down to budget and what's available.
Yes. And what the other side of it too is that home economics is not being taught in the way it used to be. And it was about using food, reducing waste in food in order to reduce costs. That was a lot of it, apart from the sewing and learning how to bake exotic dishes. But the basics was learning how to make do with the food that's available and not have any waste. A lot of families have waste at an enormous level. But that is one side of it. The other side of it is that when I go into a shop and I am waiting in the line, the queue, I don't go to the automatic machines because they're just doing away with jobs. So I stay in line and I look into the baskets. And I know people struggle, but Lord God, what they buy instead of buying proper food is, I find it hard to stand beside them. I used to intervene a long time ago, but I don't do it anymore. It's not that I was giving out to, it's just it burns you out. Most people are actually amazed at the information you would give them at the checkout counter, and they would leave half the stuff behind them. But
well, you know what's funny, Pat? I had my sister was doing Slimming World, and because she wanted to lose a few pounds, and she was drinking Diet Coke, and I tried to explain to her. I said, well, you know what's in Diet Coke and everything else, and it just, water off a duck's back, and not interested. And so I sent and I was saying, I was just wondering, are they telling the people who go to Slimming World to drink Diet Coke because of the no sugar? So I sent an email to Slimming World. Of course, I didn't get any email back at all from them to give us their comment on it. And this is what, so if people are going to speak to somebody like a nutritionist or somebody who apparently knows a lot about food, my question would be, if you're talking about losing weight, I'd say to them, do you think I should drink Diet Coke because that doesn't have any sugar? And if they turn around and say, yeah, you should do that, then I'll know straight away that they know nothing about what they're talking about.
Yeah, I will always say to people, I would sooner you drank 16 spoonfuls of sugar than Diet Coke. Because what's in the Diet Coke is far more dangerous. The aspartame breaks down into formaldehyde, and
that's right.
They will tell you aspartame doesn't cause cancer. Well, that's right, it doesn't. About the formaldehyde, that it's the secondary metabolite. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, 97 different illnesses aspartame is linked to. And again, the argument is, a girl that I was doing some work with a few weeks ago, she was getting married, going to be getting married in December, and she again was taking the Diet Coke because she thought it'd be a good idea to do that, lose a few pounds for the wedding dress, which is fine. And I said to her again, we talk about the fluid belief system, myself and Steve. It's something that we have formulated, and it's not about the actual subject matter, but how the person processes the information that you give them.
I was going to say something to you. I've drank a lot of water. Can you go to a break for a second?
Yeah, okay, no problem at all. Okay.
I want to pick up on the aspartame. It's not just the secondary metabolites. There's other aspects. Right,
okay, no problem at all. Right, you shoot away, and what we'll do is we'll just go to a quick musical break, and we'll be back in a minute.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com and peoplesinternetradio.com.
And we're back, and we're going into part two. Pat, you're back with us there. I know what it's like when you drink loads of water, and you have to do what needs to be done.
Nature calls.
Nature calls, exactly. Now, we were talking about the Diet Coke. I'll just finish that story quickly about the girl in the wedding dress. Basically, what I was saying to her, because she was saying about, what's the story with this Diet Coke, the aspartame? And my argument with her was saying, well, look, the trouble is with a lot of people, they don't do the research. They just believe what they're told by the media, and they don't go off and do the research. So what I was doing was trying to educate her to say, is to go off and do the research. She asked me about cannabis oil as well, and then she said, well, what about the psychosis? So I gave her all the information, and she went, all right. And I said, that's the problem. People don't do the research. They're not bothered to do it, but they have an opinion, because they all have an opinion. So the fluid belief system that me and Steve kind of formulated is all about, it's not so much the content, but how that person deals with information that goes against their belief system, and that's the psychology involved there. Now,
white coat syndrome. Yeah.
Yeah. Now we have a question. There's going to be questions coming in, and the question from Chris on the OYM chat is a question: how much water should we each have each day, and does tea and other drinks count?
Tea is the way I put it to people is that I would prefer about 2 litres of water. Now, some people say more, some people say less, some people say you only need 1 litre. To be honest with you, it's down to an individual. If you find that your lips are cracking, you're dehydrated. So start drinking some more water. You might need to put some salt into the water to help with metabolizing it. But the thing about the water is everybody's unique. So do you look for dehydration issues? If you're getting headaches, chances are you're dehydrated. So you rehydrate according to what you want. I prefer somewhere between 1 litre and 2 litres. But you can imagine if you're, if you're in a very hot environment, your work environment is dry, you might need more. You might need less. But when it comes to tea and other forms of water, people would say, even going back to the can of Coke, that it's water, and even if it has sugar in it, without the aspartame, is that your body needs water to flush itself out, to hydrate its cells, but also to keep the one part of your body that's most important in my mind, the liver. The liver is, to me, key to a lot of diseases.
And I would say, to add to that, Pat, that my son now, he's very good. He drinks water and not the tap water. He drinks filtered water. And what I normally say, and he's said it to me a few times, because people say about drinks like tea, coffee and all that, and I like having a cup of tea, but your body is not made of tea, it's not made of Coke, it's not made of orange juice, it's made of water. So you give your body what it wants.
Yes, but what I say to people also is that, do you wash your hands in dirty water? The answer is no. So why do you ask your body to wash in dirty water? A can of Coke is dirty water. A pot of tea is dirty water. The body has to process various products. So it's adding a load. You also have, the tea is a diuretic. So sometimes it can mean that you lose more water than you gain. So you have that issue to contend with.
Yeah.
It's not that even that you might not lose more than you gain, but you'll lose water where you shouldn't lose water. So do you count that in? Do you count a full cup of tea with the diuretic in it? How much are you going to excrete? That's down to each individual. I'm not trying to be vague on it, but that is really it. It's down to each individual. You have people, like there's 7 different pathways in the phase 2 conjugation in the liver, and each pathway processes a certain set of chemicals. And if that pathway is closed down, well, then you're going to react to something that others don't react to. So the water is something that most people don't react to unless they're not absorbing it, so it just passed through the system. So that can be an issue. But the biggest difficulty for me is liver, the liver function. Liver and adrenals will be the 2 things for me.
Yeah,
I can't really answer that question any further than that on the water. Is there another question there?
Well, I was just going to add to that also when you actually take cold water out of the fridge, as we do when it's a warm day, and we drink the cold water, well, ideally what you should be drinking is the same temperature as your body, because you're tepid, because you're making your body work harder with the cold water because it has to bring up the temperature to the body. So all these little things. But there's another, something I mentioned, I seen on an experiment they did on TV, which is quite interesting, that the difference between solid meals and liquid meals. And they got 50 army men, and 25 of them, they got 50 meals, exact same meals, but 25 of the army men had the meal liquidized, and then the other 25 ate it as a solid. And they found out after doing this experiment that the drink more so than the solids filled them up more. They weren't hungry, as quick. It took longer for them to be hungry, and the body didn't have to work as hard to break down the food because it was already in liquid form.
Yeah. So I wouldn't go rush out, start liquidizing my food.
No.
The message there is chew your food. Chew it, and chew it properly. The rule of thumb is 32 times per mouthful. Off you go. 9, myself included, we won't do that. I do as best I can, and I'm cognizant of it. But most people aren't. You wolf down the food, and it's gone, and then out to work. You can't do that. It's the chewing of food is so important. It's getting the enzymes in the saliva to start breaking down carbohydrates, and it's moving down then into the stomach, and then stomach acid starts doing the rest of it. If you don't chew your food, your stomach has to do far more work.
Yeah, totally.
So you've got that whole experiment, to me, is chew your food, because it is not right for us to go out liquidizing our food.
I have another question for you there. No, totally. It's just the experiment they did to prove the difference with the solids and the liquid. The question, I was told that cancer patients should not drink cold water. Joan wants to know, it should be room temperature. Does anyone know?
My own feeling on that, and it's only an assumption because I have no evidence to back it up, is that the less stress you put your body under, the better it is for your recovery. And drinking cold water, especially ice cold water, is a shock to the system. Doesn't matter what way you look at it, your stomach is going to have a shock, because your body temperature that's measured under your arm or under your tongue bears no resemblance to the body temperature of your stomach, or the temperature of your stomach, which is fairly high. People will be surprised. I can't remember it off the top of my head. I was surprised when I heard it. But then you throw in ice cold water. Well, then you get a saucepan that's just after having boiling water into it, and then throw cold water into it, and you can hear it crack and sizzle. It doesn't like it. Neither does your stomach. And that would register in your body as a stress, which would increase your stress hormones, which also increases overall stress. And once you have stress, excess stress on the body, healing doesn't work, doesn't happen. So that would be the only, and again, it's an assumption on my part, that is the only pathway I would see to causing a problem with cancer.
Okay.
It's a secondary effect, not a primary effect.
Okay, we have a question, artist formerly known as Greene, on PIR chat, and he wants to know, has Pat tried distilled water? And he has UST in fluoridated areas like Republic of Ireland. I don't know what the UST is, Graham, there, if you can, not too sure, but yeah, have you tried distilled water? No. I'm very lucky. I'm on my own well. Okay. So that's what I use. I would have questions about distilled water, because water in itself would have certain mineral content, even if it is fluoridated, which I would say to people, do not drink it if at all possible. Again, that's down to finances. That the mineral content will help with the absorption of the water. There are salts in the mineral in the water. Distilled water, in my mind, would be a draw on nutrients. It'd be like sugar. Sugar is devoid of nutrients and requires other nutrients to absorb it and metabolize it. So you're depleting nutrients when you're drinking sugar. You're taking very large quantities of sugar. It's like coming to a party where it says bring your own beer, and you don't bring any beer, so you're drawing off everybody else's. And sugar will do that, and I would see distilled water as doing the same. Yeah. There are companies that supply these water filtration systems, and the water is so pure that they also supply a small dropper that you add minerals to when you're drinking the water. You can use the distilled water for other processes in the kitchen, but when you want to drink it, you add on these minerals. You also have to think that if water naturally wants to balance itself with nutrients in it, and you boil your vegetables in it, it's going to draw more nutrients out of the vegetables to balance. So you have to
again that thing now on that part on the boiling is an assumption on my part, but I could see it working that way. Go ahead.
Okay, just another question for you there regarding the tea and coffee. My brother-in-law was in hospital there recently, and the question is that they still gave out, even though he was in hospital, that they still gave out sugar in people's tea and coffee. Why do they still do that? Well, they, in the hospitals, that's why I think they're trying to stop these machines that are actually, the Coke machines and the dispensers and everything else, because it's just hypocritical, really. You're going into hospital to get cured of God knows what, and they have all these machines there with all the bad stuff that's there. If anything, that should be the representative of healthy food when you go in there.
Of course.
I know, I've said this before on the show, over in California, there's a new movement on, and this restaurant opened up, and it's a fast food restaurant, but it's all organic. All the stuff is grown on the roof. And they literally, when you go in, and you will get exactly, all the good stuff. But it's fast food, but it's all good fast food.
Yeah.
And there's queues and queues of people out the door queuing up. Now, if that was the case with the likes of McDonald's and Burger King and everything else, and they did the same thing, the nation would be a lot healthier, but that means that the pharmaceutical industry and the hospitals and the doctors wouldn't have any customers. Patients. Did I say customers there? Patients.
Freudian slip.
Freudian slip there.
Yeah. Well, the thing I have on this whole control that the pharmaceuticals have over industry and over health is that the difficulty is that they can sue the state very, very easily. And we need to change our laws, stop them. And then when you start looking for evidence to back up it's only a theory until it becomes scientifically proven, that getting those studies done are very expensive. And the people who control the money and the experiment and the investigations are the pharmaceutical companies, and they are not going to put money into something that shows them up to be frauds.
Of course, totally. They're not going to affect their bottom line. It's a business. It's a corporation. Why would you help your competitor? And I do want to talk to you about CBD, but go ahead. Sorry, Pat.
Yeah, but the point being, isn't that what we employ the state to do? We employ the state to look after our health. It's in the Constitution, going back to not being even talking about our Constitution or thought anything about it. That in our Constitution, I can't remember the particular article, but it states that the government, I'll paraphrase, the government has to provide health for workers. Hence self-employed people let swing in the air. But they have to do it for workers.
But what happens? What happens, Pat? We've had thalidomide, we've had asbestos, and God knows what else, the Gardasil and the HPV, and the ministers come in and they do the 4 and 5 years, then you kick the ball down the road to the next minister, and there should be. I was thinking of a sketch the other day, and the sketch was where when you become a new minister, you're brought into this PR company, and they go, right, say this after me. It was the last government. It was the last government. Or
if questions, repeat the above.
Yeah, repeat the above. Yeah. Any questions? Anybody said anything? It was the last. So there'll be a list of 10 things that each politician's told to say when they get asked by the electorate or whoever. And this is the training. And it wouldn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. So I worked, in the corporate world. That's what they do. They go in, the PR and marketing, the management consultants come in and they tell you X, Y, and Z, because I've been in the room getting trained by these management consultants, so I know exactly what goes on. And and they'll come in and they'll go, yeah, everything's fine, and the whole company's collapsing behind them. But yeah, everything's fine. So people have to realise that it's all just it's a scam. It really is.
But you see, going back to an earlier part of our conversation, there's something I meant to mention, is that people have placed their health in other people's hands. They take no responsibility whatsoever for their health. They were told to do that, and they know no better.
Yeah,
I did it until I found out hang on a minute, this lot are a shower of pathetic individuals.
Mm.
There's a man on the internet, if you want to YouTube him, called Ivor Cummins. And he'd be somebody who you should interview. And Ivor Cummins is an engineer. And, well, he was a full-time engineer, but he was in a consultant engineering capacity. When something would happen on a building site or a construction site of one description or another, he was called in to solve a problem. So he was a problem solver. And he knew how to cut out the bullshit. He knew how to sit around a table, find out which of the engineers hadn't got a breeze, what they were talking about, sort it out, and move on.
Mm.
And he was paid, or the company he worked for was paid handsomely to do that. But they provided the service. That's the end of that. Ivor got into health difficulties himself. I think it was his liver. And he went to a consultant. Quickly found out the consultant hadn't got a clue what he was talking about, drawing on his engineering experience. And then went to a second consultant and realized that this guy was outstanding in his field, of course, and he knew nothing about what he was talking about. And what he was talking about was cholesterol, and cholesterol in the body, and cholesterol as a marker of disease. And what Ivor found, and has been known since 1969-70, but Ivor found out other markers and other information, and he's very good at it now, was that cholesterol and plaque around the heart is not an indication of heart disease. Mm. What was an indication, bigger, better indication of heart disease was a calcium deposits in the arteries and veins, but primarily in the arteries. Once you see calcium deposits, you are going to get a heart attack. Simple as that. But I confronted a specialist, a heart specialist, about 15 years ago, and asked him, what is going on with this whole cholesterol thing? He looked at me and he said, don't talk to me. He said, the younger ones are a pain in the backside. That I know that 50% of the people who come to me on the slab to have open heart surgery have no cholesterol problems whatsoever. That's 50%.
Wow.
That was 15 years ago.
And that's worrying. That is happening. We did have Dr. Lorraine Day on the show a few years ago, and she is an ex-trauma surgeon. She's a qualified medical doctor, and she said doctors are only good for doing two things: writing the prescription and taking body parts out. And she's a medical doctor, and she had cancer, and she fought her way back from having cancer. I've got another couple of questions for you there, Pat. Peter on the OYM chat said, question for Pat. I heard that if you drink cold water, the body must burn its calories to bring the temperature back up, and you lose weight. Now, I've heard about this so-called water diet, but I'm not too sure how it works, but I've heard about it. Does that ring a bell with you?
The water diet, I just heard of it myself a couple of weeks ago, believe it or not, and the gentleman who was using it lost a huge amount of weight. It is not that you are burning calories because of cold water. It was literally, that's all they drank was cold water. That's all they had. They had very few meals of any description. And you lose weight very, very fast, but you will also put it back on just as fast, if not twice as fast, depending on how you exit the program. To me, it's not the right way to lose weight. The rising of the conversion of calories to heat up the cold water, but you're also introducing stress into the system as well, and that has its own effects. Stress, the cortisol hormone that's excreted from the adrenal glands, will put on the visceral fat, the fat that's around the belly that people find extremely difficult to shift. And you will only shift that when you redress the cortisol issue, the stress hormone. You find that people are awake, they're falling asleep at 8 o'clock in the afternoon. This would be one of 5 different patterns, but I'll give you this particular pattern. It seems to be the most common one. People get up in the morning, eat very little, or if they do eat something, it's carbohydrate rich. They go to work. They're okay until 10 o'clock because they have another hit of carbohydrates. They have their lunch, but then it comes 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they have what's called a 3 o'clock slump. That's a dip in cortisol levels. And the best thing to do is lie down for 10 minutes. don't want to go to sleep. You just want to lie down flat, close your eyes, switch off, 10 minutes. You get back up, you're buzzing again. You're not buzzing, but you have good energy. Otherwise, what happens is you're continuously fighting through this tiredness, and you end up worse.
Is that not called the power nap, the 10-minute power nap?
It's called a power nap, but what the reality is your cortisol levels have dipped. And they shouldn't be dipping the way they are. And an awful lot of reason they're dipping is because stress and sugars.
Right.
That's a complicated discussion, but that's basically it. There is a book out there called Adrenal Fatigue, a 21st Century Syndrome. I'll repeat that. Adrenal Fatigue, a 21st Century Syndrome. It's by a Dr. James Wilson in the United States. You can get it, and you can get it ordered through your bookshop or library. You can get it on. It's relatively cheap. It's about between $12 and $20, and that will explain the different types and the different patterns that will happen. Anyway, the next situation is that the person goes home. They're sitting in the armchair about 8 o'clock in the evening. They're falling asleep. They just really are tired. Anyway, they stay up after 11 o'clock. Bang, they're buzzing. They don't know why they were tired earlier. They haven't got a clue why you've got all this energy. What has happened at 11 o'clock is the cortisol that was supposed to wake you up in the morning has just been released, and now you can't sleep. And people say, I was worrying last night and I can't sleep. That is not true. You couldn't sleep, therefore you worried because you had nothing else got to do. You had nothing else to do except lie there and worry.
You know, when people say they oversleep, because I've done this has happened to me, and I'm sure there's people out there, where your body is telling you to go asleep, but you could be watching a movie or something and you want to get to the end of it, or you could be watching a program, you want to get to the end of it. So then you go past that stage where you want to sleep, and all of a sudden you're awake. That's
the cortisol push at 11 o'clock.
Right, okay. So next time when that happens, I'll just switch off the TV and go asleep. Right, we have more information coming in on the chat room, and one of the things that we're talking about, I do want to talk about CBD. We have to talk about that.
Okay.
So we should well, actually, I'll just quickly mention this. Now, there's a bit of a talk on the chat about MDF. Now, I've heard about this, folks. I'm sure Pat has as well, and I'm sure you have. MDF, and it kind of, if you're not wearing masks, if you're in the environment where you're using a lot of MDF, I'm not talking about the DIYer who does it now and again, but even then, you have to be careful. You have to be in an open space or near enough open space. But if you're working with MDF on a regular basis, you have to be wearing the proper masks, because MDF in itself apparently is very dangerous, I've heard. Have you heard anything on that, Pat?
Yeah, I've heard things just anecdotally, but I haven't gone into the science of it. I work at timber myself, and I've come across MDF quite often. MDF, for the people who don't know, is called medium density fiberboard. So when you go to the last bit of it, the F is for fiber, and it's basically a form of cardboard, rough cardboard, to be honest with you. You pour water on it, it'll just start disintegrating in a very similar way to cardboard. It has a huge amount of glues. Some of it can have preservatives, the outdoor stuff. And when you machine this stuff, the fibers are minute. I would put it in the same category, to be honest with you, as asbestos.
Yeah,
it's something that I prefer not to use in the workshop, but when I do, I certainly use ventilation and a mask.
Yeah, I would say, Chris, I know you have a question there about, is the Greene MDF okay? I don't know. I don't know whether Pat knows Greene MDF, Pat, is that safe?
Honestly, I don't think any of them are safe. If you've got a microfiber that's floating in the air and you're breathing it in, it's not safe.
Yeah, okay, so...
Now, going back to my earlier part is that when everybody is an individual, what nutritional therapists do and what herbalists do is that they treat each individual person differently. If you go in with a particular dis-ease and the next person comes in with the same dis-ease, they can have different roots. So you have to find each root, separate root, and deal with the root of the cause of the problem. There's no point in dealing with the symptoms. Doctors will deal with symptoms.
Yeah.
So if you go in with the same disease and 5 other people go in with the same disease, you'll all get the same treatment.
And I have an elderly relative who obviously goes to the nurse and doctor on a regular basis. And I keep saying all they're doing is treating the symptom. They're not looking at the cause of it. They're treating the symptom. And that's all they're trained to do, is to treat the symptom. They won't look at the cause of it. And I think that's something that people have to be aware of. If you do have a medical issue or a problem, what you try and do is find out what the cause is, what's causing it. Do a bit of research. Now, Graham said on the People's Internet Radio, I have to agree with you, Graham, there. He said they raised the cholesterol levels to artificially put most people in the camp of being in danger of stroke, etc. All they did was move the goalposts to sell statin drugs, the old switcheroo, and yeah, we've heard that.
Well, it goes further. What he did is actually they lowered. Graham got the idea right, but it's just a minor detail. They moved the goalposts as the primary part of his point. They employed Pfizer. They used to be called the Pfizer nurses. Were employed to go into doctor's surgeries because the doctor didn't have the time to do it, and trawl through all the old files, so that when 6 was an acceptable level, and now they moved it down to 6.5 is acceptable at one stage. Then they moved it down to 6. Then they moved it down to 5.5. Now they're talking about 3.5 to 4. And each time they moved it down, the nurse would have the files of the people who were at 6. So 6 was acceptable, but now they're at 5.5, which is the new goalpost. Mm. So they would find all these people at 6 and tell them to come back in.
Yeah.
And put them on statins. Mm. And then they'd bring it down to 5. And then they would find all the people who were at 5.5, bring them back in, you to go on a statin. So every time their profit margins dropped, they brought up their profit margins by increasing sales artificially. And the thing about statins is that we all know at this stage that they are detrimental to people's health. They're extremely dangerous.
Yeah. And again, I suppose we talked about scares and them kicking the ball down the road, kicking the can down the road over and over again. We have this cervical smear issue where women have died of cancer. And that was a whole catastrophe in itself, just a complete incompetence in the system. And,
well, it's incompetence, Alan. It's incompetence, Alan, in which system? There was a point put to me there recently by a priest, by my dad. And he said to me, I said to him, I said, I have a problem here, Bill. I said, we're talking about cervical cancer tests being done. And the only country that seems to be hit was Ireland. Surely to God, these cervical cancer laboratory tests, they're done in laboratories that are huge, and they're not just serving Ireland. So why are we not hearing of a knock-on effect in other countries? And he suggested that the problem is not with the lab. The problem was with the Irish Civil Service. When they got the information, they mixed it all up. They put it with their own files. Mm. And I said, well, that's a good possibility. Mm. But it's not being talked about. It's not being questioned. Mm. I still have a difficulty in that only one country seems to be affected from that laboratory. And is that laboratory only serving Ireland? Which would, me, be very difficult to believe, to be honest with you, because we're such a small market.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to be done. It's system failures all over the place.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to what we said about incompetence and the way the system's set up and everything else. Right, let's get into talking about CBD, because we want to have a chat about that. There is a massive movement out there. I even seen a group on Facebook called Dads for CBD Oil, or Dads for Cannabis, to get it into the system. And Ireland being Ireland. And again, part of the brainwashing, this girl that I was talking to you, I told you about earlier about the Diet Coke, she wanted to know about the cannabis. And I said, right, this is the situation. I said, do you know why it was made illegal, a plant? She said no, and I explained it to her. And then she said, but what about the whole kind of, it causes psychosis? And I said, well, you're right. It does cause psychosis if you take the wrong stuff. If you take the stuff from the street, from the drug dealers, that's laced full of chemicals, yes, you're right. It does cause psychosis. But if you grow 6 plants in your back garden and take it from there, you won't get the psychosis. Now, I come across an actual report by all the doctors concerned who did the research into this, and 100% of them agreed that it was the drug on the street that was causing psychosis because it was laced full of chemicals. Because, with any drugs, they fatten them up to make more money, and the rest is history.
Yeah, beef them up, and not only that, but they have the crops growing in artificial circumstances. If they were legal, they'd be grown in proper conditions, and they have all sorts of molds growing on them, and they're hit with all sorts of antifungals and what have you.
And one of the things, I'll just quickly say to people that if you want to know how cocaine is put together, Gordon Ramsay went over to South America. It's on YouTube. You can watch it. And they show you the guy, how he puts the actual cocaine together. And he uses fuel. He actually uses, actually uses a kind of fuel, and all dangerous stuff he's putting into the coke. Unbelievable. So go to YouTube, Gordon Ramsay, South America, cocaine. Have a look at that. I mean, unbelievable that people are taking this stuff. But yeah, give us your take. We were talking about Viratumi, the license for CBD, and why Ireland is so behind. The last time there was a vote in the Dáil to legalise it, I think it was 8 people said yes and 100 people said no or something. Again, the party whip system, and everybody's controlled, I assume. But what's your take on it?
Yes, I could have talked about that for an hour. The difficulty I have is, first of all, CBD oil with the THC and CBD oil without it, they all have benefits. No two ways about it. The short experience I have of it, not that I have much, is that anybody I know who's been on it has benefited immensely. As regard the licenses for it, the late Alex Bizert here in Drogheda, who was a member of the EDI and very good friend, he died only recently because he had a massive seizure, hit his head off the ground, and died from brain bleeds. But Alex was virtually epilepsy-free for about 7 months while he was self-medicating with a cannabis oil that he was making at home. It was the only time in his life that he enjoyed life because of the benefits of the oil. I can't help but think that if the oil was properly produced and he was properly supervised, he'd still be with us today.
Yeah.
Now, that Alex only died there about 4 weeks ago. Now, the thing about the acceptance of it by the system, I was speaking with a cancer patient, a cancer research assistant, who recently saw the price of 5 tablets for chemotherapy. They were €1,500 for the 5 tablets. Another person I know in the industry was an old man. He's not that old, but elderly man who is dying. He will not survive. That simple. I'd say he's only a matter of days, if not a couple of weeks. At the very, very most, a couple of months. He was put on a drug that I think there was 30 tablets in it. The retail price on it, not the wholesale, retail, €10,500. Now, you have those 2 chemicals going into a body to create havoc. But you have CBD oil with THC for a month's supply. What are you talking about? €200, €300?
250 probably.
250
sterling, yeah.
Yeah, sterling for a month's supply. But with better outcomes.
And no side effects.
Virtually none. I would never say none. Yeah. Because some people react differently.
Well, you're going to get probably a little bit of a high, a little bit,
I wouldn't see high as a side effect.
No.
I would see high as part of the process.
Yeah.
But I would see some people, if the liver pathway that processes the components or the compounds within the oil is blocked, well, then you have an issue. That's where you get toxicity. And that, again, is individual, down to each individual. So the 2 parts of this is no science has been done. Well, virtually none. I heard of one fellow doing something about it in Israel while I was on holidays, and they aren't doing very much, but they're doing something. But their results haven't been posted yet. So you've got very little research being done, because quite frankly, just by the prices I quoted you, there's a lot of money to be lost by a lot of companies.
I would say to anybody, and I'm sure people might have done this, go into your local chemist and just look around the chemist at all the drugs that are on sale, whether it's a cough bottle or anything else. It's all produced by pharmaceutical companies. And then just ask yourself, look how much money they are making from selling these products. And you could probably deal with probably half the things. I was down in the Navan Hospital there a few weeks ago with my mother-in-law, and the waiting room was packed full of people. And half of them people could possibly cure themselves or heal themselves. I won't say cure, because obviously you can't say that unless you're a medical doctor. Heal themselves maybe with natural products if they were just aware of it.
Yeah. There's one thing I will say about pharmacists, because I know a little bit about it. If a drug comes into a pharmacy and is handed out on the medical card system, and that drug costs, say, €10,000 cost, the pharmacist's profit on that €10,000 is €3.50. That's it, €3.50 for handling it. If it goes out of date, the pharmacist takes up the losses, not the state. Now, so the drug companies are the primary beneficiaries, not the pharmacies, not your local pharmacist. The only reason that pharmacies are able to stay in business today is that the volume of drugs is horrendous. Just to digress slightly on that, the time Mary Harney attacked the pharmacies, and it was an attack, it was done badly, there was one sentence that came out, and she said that in a 5-year period, the fees paid to pharmacists had doubled. The question I had was in the same 5-year period, the fee paid to pharmacies hadn't doubled. Now, this is the use of language and how they manipulate, going back, talking about other things. The fees had doubled because the fees is the plural. That is the bottom line. But the fee hadn't. So, for argument's sake, the fees paid out in the year 2000, for argument's sake, was, say, €100,000 to a particular individual. And the fees 5 years later was €200,000. But the fee per item hadn't changed. The fee, take the letter S off. The fee in 2000 was €3.50 per item. The fee in 2005 was €3.50 per item. So what's happened? The amount of drugs, the volume of drugs had doubled in the 5-year period. Nobody picked up on that. And that is a disgrace.
And I agree. I have worked for a pharmaceutical company, and I also worked for a life sciences company who dealt with all the pharmacies. And I remember when we were going to a dodgy time in London, probably around the 2000s, I think. Was it? Yeah, around the 2000s. They were looking at the recession. The dot-com bubble had gone bang. And companies were winding up and, being taken over and all that kind of stuff. And I remember speaking to one of the directors of this company, and I said, are you not concerned about, business? And he said, look, when people get depressed or there's a problem with society, they obviously go and, buy a few drugs, antidepressants and what have you. And he said, no, we're not concerned with that at all. And again, what they want to do, and we've said this before, is perpetual drugs. They don't want you. They don't want to heal you, because if they heal you, then you won't be buying the drugs. You won't be getting the drugs. They want you to be on drugs every month. So every month you get the drugs, whether you pay for them or whether the state pays for them, you get the drugs, and that's what they want, because that's a good customer. That's a good patient, because healthy people don't make the money. Now, we had Ralph Ring on the show, and he's an expert in natural law. And he was brought into this company to find a solution to a problem. And, what he thought was to find the solution to the problem. And within a couple of days, he found the solution, and he went to his boss all happy, and he said, there you go, I found the solution, there you go, it's all sorted. And his boss took him to one side and said, no, we want you to look for it, but we don't want you to find it, because if you find it, profits and the money that we're getting from the government dries up. So we want you to keep looking. So, and this is what the cancer charities, they want to keep looking for the solution, but they don't want to find the solution because all that money dries up.
Yeah, but when you hit on depression there a minute ago, and there's a man by the name of Bill Walsh. It's the Bill Walsh program, or Bill Walsh Research Institute. And when he researched depression, he found that there were a few biotypes of people. There's people who have folate deficiency can have depression, pyrrole disorder, toxic overloads. You have methylation. Now, you can be under-methylating. In other words, you are not processing through the liver as much as you should. But what he also found was that with these biotypes, there are certain traits that people will come out with. I'll give you one, for instance, the under-methylating. He reckons about 38% of depressives are under-methylators. So their liver is not functioning properly. It can be due to a DNA problem. It can be due to a toxic problem, but primarily it's usually DNA. And these people would have signs of, be strong-willed, they're controlling, they're obsessive. They'd have OCD, ODD. They're usually high achievers. They can have antisocial personalities as well. They can have a calm exterior but a tense interior. There's various markers that you can see that these people are under methylators. And then they will go to develop to, signs of schizophrenia. But when you help with, various nutrients like inositol, methionine, serine, that you increase zinc, vitamin A and C and other nutrients. But when you start doing this, their schizophrenia or their depression changes. It goes to the point where they can have normal lives. Now, but they have to stay on the regime. Now, it's not just giving these particular nutrients and others, I might add. That's only a handful of them, and they're given at levels that would be balked at by a doctor. But there are systems out there to help people, but they're not being allowed. And there is the difficulty, like in Switzerland, going back to the political side, alternative therapies are allowed, and they're being paid for by the state as the same as the pharmaceuticals. And they're the home of pharmaceuticals. So how did this happen? The reason it happened out there is that they have direct democracy. They've had for 200 years. And the people said, we will call a referendum. Well, some guy went in and started to call a referendum. And what the state can do is they can call that person in and say, look, we will allow it, just don't call the referendum. And they say, right, why have the expense of a referendum when you're going to allow it? And it's allowed.
Wow.
And that's all it took.
Yeah. The other thing I like about the DDI is the recall.
Yeah, you can be taken back and fired. Simple as that. But it's simple in to say, but very difficult in practice, because you have to remember that each representative is elected by a cohort of people in each constituency, and by firing that person, you're infringing on their rights. So that has to be a mechanism has to be there to cater for that. So it's not as straightforward as it could be, but recall is something that has to be done. Yeah, it really has to be brought in. Yeah. No. But going back to the health issue, is that there is a variety of health regimes that I would like to see in this country, practiced in hospitals. I would like hospitals to be able to, you walk in, go left for allopathic, go right for naturopathic. And you have, like, ozone therapy. It's allowed in Germany. It went through the High Court in Germany. They tried to stop it, but it was allowed. IV vitamin C. The Wichita Clinic in the Reardon Clinic in Wichita, if anybody wants to look them up. Liposomal vitamin C. I don't know if you've ever spoken about liposomal vitamin C.
I know about the case in New Zealand where the guy was on
Mr. Smith, yeah.
Yeah, and they did intravenous vitamin C, and 13 days later he walked out. But the family had to fight to give him that because they were going to switch off his machine.
The best part of that program, I think, is where the brothers were asked, well, what did you say to the doctor? And they looked at each other, the man's sons, and they said, well, let's say we gave him a very robust conversation. I could, you can imagine the big New Zealand rugby types talking to this little doctor 3 floors up in a hospital and saying, can you fly? You know, the window's going to break in a minute. Can you fly? You know, but that was my impression of that. But yes, liposomal vitamin C. They started with IV and then found liposomal. And that's something that people should look up, and you can make it at home. When I was speaking with Dr. Honinghack in Wichita, I was helping a young woman with cancer, and when he asked, was it homemade liposomal, and I said, yes, it was, he said, just shovel it in. That's it, just shovel it in.
So how do you make it?
What I'll do is I'll send you a link to a site that actually explains it, and then you can send it out to everybody. You put it on your site.
Yeah.
Basically, you get lecithin, preferably pea lecithin or vegetable lecithin rather than soy lecithin.
And where do you get that?
I can get it in health food shops.
Okay.
And the lecithin is then dissolved in water, and you leave it overnight to dissolve. You have one of these metal cleaners, you know, the jewellery cleaners, the high-frequency jewellery cleaners?
Yeah, yeah.
And when I did it, it was very basic, but they've upgraded the process. There's a particular type of bowl that you need to get. It's a glass bowl. And you also have a glass stirring device, basically a stick of glass. You don't want any contaminants getting into the liposome.
Yeah.
You get sodium citrate, which is basically salt and vitamin C. No, just when I say salt, sodium, Na, and vitamin C. So the vitamin C is buffered with the salt or with the sodium. If you use pure vitamin C, it's very corrosive. It's acidic, so it's buffered. And what you do then is that you put the vitamin C into the mix of lecithin, and you put it into this high-frequency vibrating machine. And what happens then is that the lecithin breaks into little bubbles, and you have to store it and vibrate it. There's a whole regime for doing that. As I say, I'll send you the link, Alan, later on.
Okay.
Not today, but tomorrow.
Yeah.
And what happens then is that a liposome is, for all intents and purposes, if you had a football or a tennis ball and you injected the vitamin C into the tennis ball. So it's encapsulated in this ball of lecithin. In that position, in that state, it's extremely easily absorbed. So you can take large quantities of vitamin C without getting the diarrhea. If you take vitamin C orally, if you want to take your maximum amount of vitamin C, normal vitamin C, in the powder form orally, what you do is you go up to what's called bowel tolerance. Vitamin C will draw water into the intestines, so you end up with diarrhea. So in order to go to find your maximum, you take enough vitamin C to cause you diarrhea. Now, don't take enough to cause you to run. Yeah. But take enough to cause you to go, I need to go. And then you back off. And as you back off, you'll find a level where you can tolerate that amount of vitamin C without causing a soft stool.
Does your body get customized to the amount you're taking, where you might have to up it down the road?
What they have found is that when you have an acute illness, say a flu or a cold or an injury, you will use more vitamin C. So your bowel tolerance, your tolerance will go up. So if you are, say, if you feel normal, if you feel okay, if you feel fine, and you bring up to bowel tolerance, Well, you know that's the level you can take, maximum amount of vitamin C you can take without causing the issues.
Mm.
But with liposomal vitamin C, you can quadruple that amount without getting any side effects with diarrhea.
And how did you get on with this lady who had the cancer?
It's a mixed blessing. Natalia was 38 when she came to me. She was told that she had stage 4 cervical cancer with metastasis in her neck and lung, both lungs and the neck, and it was attached to a large blood vessel, so it was inoperable. She was told to get her affairs in order, but if she took chemo and radiation, both, she might live for a year.
Mm.
I did various things with her. I did the ozone therapy. I did the IV vitamin C. I did liposomal vitamin C. I did the Gerson therapy, which is another thing for people to look up. Gerson, Max Gerson.
Mm.
And I did a lot of other things with her as well, minor details, minor changes, but that was the primary ones. And a year and a half later, without any chemo or radiation, she was a healthy young woman, but the mass, the metastasis had started to shrink, but the main mass hadn't shrunk at all.
Mm.
Now, at this stage, I did not know that cannabis oil existed.
Mm.
I assumed that if she had the cannabis oil, it would have disappeared overnight after the year and a half. But anyway,
okay.
Go ahead.
Did you see the lady on ITV with Holly Willoughby and Philip Schofield, who took the cannabis oil? She had 6 weeks before she was going to be dead, and she was riddled with cancer. Did you see that?
I didn't see it, but I heard of it,
Okay.
and I didn't have to see it because I know it.
Yeah.
I know that would happen.
Okay.
I don't question anyone like that. I take it at face value because of my own experience.
Mm.
The first cancer patient was my father. But Natalia, anyway, we came to the conclusion, because I didn't have the knowledge of the CBD oil or anything else, was that this mass wasn't shrinking and we needed it to shrink. So she agreed to go for chemo. She went for 3 bouts of chemo. Her chemo started at 10 o'clock in the morning, finished at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the evening. She got up and walked out of the hospital. No other patient ever did that.
Mm.
After 3 bouts of chemo, the tumour had completely gone, the metastasis had completely gone. There was nothing left of them. She took 1 extra one just to be unsafe.
Yeah.
But against my wishes, she was put on a low-dose chemotherapy just to be safe thing.
Mm.
And 3 years later, she got kidney cancer.
Yeah.
And the difficulty there was that she had no more finances to do the program that I was doing. Now, I don't charge any money for doing it, by the way. Yeah. Not even a cent. And I found out later why it was, because she was telling all of her friends about how much I helped and how good I was and how that she was alive because of it. I had never spoken to her friends until the day of her funeral. But I think today she would be alive if it wasn't for the insistence of the hospital putting her on low-dose chemotherapy.
Yeah. Well, it's just a pity that that's the case. But, I've heard these stories where, people try alternative, it works, and they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, oh, no, you shouldn't be doing that. And then they go off. Steve will tell you a story about one of his family members who did that. But listen, Pat, we have reached that time. And, there's going to be, I know, we were in the flow there and loads of information, but look, there's always a part two, part two, if you want to call it that.
Part two, yeah. I just hope it was a help to somebody.
Well, yeah, look, all this information is good. People need to check it out. Look, I'm not saying I'm perfect either. What I'm trying to do, what I can do, and Steve is the same. We have the likes of the Pain Genie, we have the likes of the speaking machines, we have, with the serapeptides I take, the spirulina I take every now and again. We have filtered water. I have the Holland & Barrett CBD, oil. It's okay. I was gifted that. I am taking that. And the magnesium oil again, your body needs enzymes. So everybody, you do what you can. But, you could walk out tomorrow and get hit by a Guinness truck. So you don't really know what's around the corner. You just hope.
Yeah, there's a man I would listen to. Some people might know him as Dr. Joel Wallach, and he would always say you can never get away from a landmine.
Yeah.
And the landmine, if you get the landmine, doesn't matter how many nutrients you have, you hit the landmine.
Yeah, and that's it. So what you do is you try and reduce. Things happening by, the obvious things. Stay away from the bad chemicals and various things like that. But okay, Pat, listen, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
That's great. Thanks for coming on. Before we let you go, can you give us all your contact information, where people can find you, and if they want to email you and talk to you further about what we were talking about tonight?
Oh dear, I don't have it off the top of my head. I suppose my Facebook page would be the easiest one. I don't have a photograph of myself because I like to keep myself as private as possible. But just look up Pat Greene on Facebook, and you'll probably find me there.
Brilliant stuff.
I don't advertise. I'm word of mouth, and anybody who wants me can get me. And I leave my telephone number with you, Alan, that if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And if people want to contact me, they can.
Well, I think.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think there's a YouTube video in there about making that vitamin C. I think it's...
You want to be careful. Yeah, what I'll do is I'll send on the link that I feel is the better one. Some of those YouTube ones can be a little bit lacking.
Yeah.
So I'd prefer... I've looked through quite a few of them, and this is the one that I would use.
Okay. Would you do one yourself?
Yeah. Yes, I did it.
You did that? Oh, yeah. Oh, send that over to me, and definitely we'll have a look at that. Okay, stay with us there for a minute, Pat. We're just going to go off to a musical break. I want to play the song, a bit of a dedication for Steve, because of the bad news that we received yesterday. A family member passed on yesterday, so this is for Steve and the family.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com and peoplesinternetradio.com.
Hi folks, that's Hallelujah by Plantronics, just a dedication to Steve and the family there. He lost a family member yesterday, so condolences to Steve and the family, and that's why he's not on the show tonight. I hope everything's going well anyway, but I'll probably be talking to him during the week. So that was just a little tune for him there. Right, okay, now we spoke to Pat all about health issues tonight, and we are going to be getting a homeopath on the show to talk about what they do. But it's going to be after this event. The Irish Society of Homeopathy brings you this special screening of Just One Drop on Wednesday the 13th of June at 6:30 at Lighthouse Cinema in Smithfield, Dublin. They say, we are delighted to announce that Jim Kerr will be our MC on the evening for the screening of Just One Drop, the movie, at Lighthouse Cinema, Dublin. Jim is not only a famous singer, musician, songwriter and a member of the internationally acclaimed band The Corrs. Jim is also a keen advocate of natural health and healing. Just One Drop tells the little-known story of homeopathy, the most controversial system of medicine ever invented. Now, we are going to be getting a lady to come on the show. I think it's around the 17th of June. I'll have to check the schedule. I'll have to check the time. But they've agreed to come on, and basically what we're going to be doing is talking about homeopathy and the benefits of that and all the positives that it's done, and obviously why the system doesn't want people practicing homeopathy. Because obviously if you get cured naturally or you get healed naturally, then obviously why do you need pharmaceutical drugs? That's how the system works. So they're going to be coming on in a few weeks' time, and check that out. Check the schedule. You'll see the information up there. Now, the other day as well, regular listeners will remember we had a couple on last year called Kate and Marcus from Karma Hemp. And Kate and Marcus are the only two people licensed in Ireland to produce the actual hemp plant. They grow it, and what they do is they will. You can get ice cubes, CBD ice cubes, and they kindly sent myself and Steve trays of CBD ice cubes, which you actually put in your drink, and then you drink it, and it was great. So I happened to be speaking to Kate the other day in the car. I think the website's karmahemp.com, karmahemp.com, and they've now expanded their range of products. So I've said to Kate, well, why don't you come back on and tell us what the update is and see how you get on. Talking to us, we'll talk about the new products, new product range, because anything that's natural, I think, is always good to try and promote. Anyway, so we've asked Kate to come on. So again, keep an eye on the schedule, because there's a lot of guests that we're going to get on. We're going to be doubling up on shows as well, and we're going to be getting different guests on. Now, for next week, the show, we have a chap called Walt Silva, and Walt has been playing around, I believe, with the Lemurian plug and shungite, and making the actual Lemurian plug super sensitive and more advanced with the shungite. So I'm not too sure. We got it thanks to the guest who it might have been Peter actually, who's on the chat room at the moment, who asked us to get Walt on. So we're going to get Walt on, have a talk with him anyway. And also what we're going to do is we're going to get Harry Rhodes on. Now, if you remember, the last time we had Harry Rhodes on, Harry's the guy that does the weather modification, and when he came on, he was talking about going over to South Africa because they were having a massive drought over there, and there's major problems with water. So Harry went over, I don't know whether you people have seen this on the internet, Harry went over with his team, I think, or a couple of people, and basically they're now having floods in South Africa, in Cape Town. There's loads of water. Apparently all the rivers are, getting full up. But so we'll get an update from Harry, and we'll see how he got on in South Africa and what he's been doing and what he's been up to, because they've been doing sterling work. They've really helped out down in SA. I've seen some of the photos and some of the videos, and they seem to have a great time down there. But they got the work done. So fair play to Harry for doing that. So that's what's on the cards. We have a number of guests. Thanks for people sending in the emails for certain guests to come on the show. We do email some people. Sometimes they don't get back to us, and there's nothing else we can do if they don't want to come on and talk to us. That's just the way it works. But we do try our best and see what we can do. But that's really the news from myself. If there's any news that you have, anything that happened during the week, there's loads of things going on. We know there's loads of things going on. Hawaii, as you know, is going off big guns at the moment, and they're looking at Yellowstone as well, and they're saying that might be going off, and there's other things happening, and there's things being seen in the sky, and energy changing. People are feeling different energies. They're feeling all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot going on. Maybe there is something got to do with this, the energies and the event. And October seems to be a hot month, but look, how many times have we heard it before about mentioning dates and times and everything else, and all of a sudden it comes down and nothing happens and we just move on. But sure, look, we'll see what we can do anyway. We'll see, we'll report on it, and if we have any news on it, we'll let you know. We'll keep you posted. But for myself anyway, Alan James, I'm sure if Steve was here, he'd say goodbye. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks again for tuning in. You know who we are, OYMradio.com. We're on MeWe as well. Don't forget, we are set up on MeWe. So if you don't want to use Facebook, go over to MeWe. I don't know who's on PIR after the show, but after whoever's on, I'm sure it's going to be a very good show. So for myself, Alan James, take it easy, take care. We'll see you next week.